Here comes the intro. Skip forward 30 seconds if you want to get right to the episode. This is the Tailboard Talk Podcast, the best health, wellness, and lifestyle resource for the fire service. We're using stories, lessons, and tips from the front lines to give a realistic view of what the job can do to us and how we can make it out alive. I'm Chris Morella, a firefighter since 03, medic since 05, full-time since 08, and promoted to lieutenant in 20. I'm also a personal trainer and strength coach, and I'm here to give you the best information and host the best discussions to make us capable and durable, both on the job and away from it. So grab a heater, steal some fancy creamer from First Shift, and let's go chat. Well, it's Halloween today. The obvious conversation topic with Halloween would be candy. Yeah. Right? Okay. And I'm fully prepared to lose listeners and make people angry over my candy choices because I have nowhere near the preference for candy, which means that the stuff I do prefer is probably not, like, would you consider good? Mm-hmm. I'm willing to bet 2 out of 3 you're going to be like, you're going to walk out of here almost.
I think for me, it's not as much what your top is. It's what you're willing to just say, these are absolutely nuts.
Oh, it's
so as long as you don't have any that land on the absolutely not.
I don't know.
So if you lead out with Heath Bar, then we're done.
Nope, no, Heath Bar is pretty safe. All right. I agree. Heath Bar is, it's almost, oh man, see, I'm nervous to get to this one. It's almost as bad as Butterfingers, Heath Bar. Okay, so where are we sitting on that one?
No, Butterfinger's delicious.
But it's just hard to eat.
It is.
You end up with marbles for teeth.
You do.
It's like packed in there.
It's great in a blizzard, though.
Again, it's like it's as bad as putting Nerds in a blizzard.
Well, Nerds are the worst.
Okay.
I mean, they're not the worst, but.
Are we talking candy in general? Can we go? I'm down with that.
Sure.
I'm fine. Okay. Whew. All right. So less important then. Let's start with your top 3.
Oh, well, we know Skittles is leading the way.
Yeah.
I would go Skittles, probably Snickers, and I didn't like Reese's Cups for a long time, but they came out with some new design that has been better lately. The chocolate to peanut butter ratio is a little bit closer, okay. So that's been good. I don't know what it is. I don't think it's a Take 5.
You needed more chocolate, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. It was too much peanut butter.
Yeah.
Which I know doesn't seem like a right thing.
Yeah. God, I'm going to make you so angry with me.
So what did I say? Skittles, Reese's, and Snickers?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you had Snickers in the 2 spot.
I'm comfortable leading out with those 3.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Where does Three Musketeers fit in your life?
It doesn't.
Yeah, so that's top 3. Okay, so that's
in the top 3?
Yeah. Why am I... Yeah, it is.
I always wondered why like you go to Target and they put Three Musketeers in Halloween bags. I'm like, nobody likes these. But...
I'll take them.
Okay.
So we got Three Musketeers. Second one, Payday.
Paydays are really underrated, but they're delicious.
All right, good.
Yeah.
That I don't know. I never know where that one lands because it's such a not
Payday
candy.
And similar Baby Ruths are.
Baby Ruth's a little much. See, I'm not big on Snickers. Yeah. Something about I don't know. They just taste not great.
Now I don't like Snickers in a blizzard.
I've never had it.
The caramel gets too
hard.
Too hard. Yeah.
Kind of like a Butterfinger.
Pebbles.
All right. So my third one I think you're on board with it, but not in your top 3 is probably Mike and Ike.
That's fine.
Yeah. See, it's not bad. All right. So what are your top your no-fly list? Your 3 on your no-fly list?
Dots are number 1.
Dots. What's a dot? I mean, I know what it is, but what is that?
Dots.
Yeah, I'm down with that.
Nerds would be on there. Sid gets made fun of every time she wants to have some of those.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can go with a tradition. I mean, Three Musketeers would be on my don't touch list for sure.
That's too bad. Yeah.
But any of the like hot tamales, get rid of those things. Those are terrible.
Which is just, I understand that's a version of a Mike and Ike, but yeah, I'm on board with that.
It's just too much of a thing. Like, who wants a whole box of cinnamon? There's no diversity in there.
I understand that.
I mean, one's fine, but then you're just like, ugh.
Yeah. Where's the gummies fit in your world? Gummy worms, bears, shapes.
I like 3 or 4 gummy bears, and then that's it. Like, I couldn't do a whole bag of gummy bears. And I wouldn't go into a store and be like, yeah, give me those gummy worms.
Okay. I'm constantly afraid every time I start eating gummy worms, I'm going to have that sugar-free gummy worm reaction.
Yeah.
Because I'll eat the whole thing.
Yeah.
Gummy worms are easier for me.
I have eaten Sour Patch Kids till like my tongue bled though. I mean, not quite
Those are
to
different
that,
animals.
but not quite to that, but definitely to the point where I'm like, man, I don't think I can eat anything else. Like my mouth hurts too much, but I better try and get a few more down.
All right, I'm going to throw an overrated candy. I think it's the most overrated. That just the first thing when I think overrated, this one comes to mind. Besides Snickers, I think Snickers is way overrated.
Okay. Milky Way.
No, because it's half the Three Musketeers. It's 3/4 of a Three Musketeers with part of a Snickers. The caramel apple taffy pops, the hard green with the caramel dip on them.
Yeah.
They're impossible to eat either way.
Yeah, I don't even consider that's not even
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
That's like a boutique thing that.
It's like a memory thing. It's like
Yeah.
like cartons of milk at school because you get those
Right.
through some program at school. I can't remember what we got
Do they
them
even
for.
sell those anymore?
Oh yeah,
Do they really?
yeah, absolutely. It's an institution. It's gonna be like a retro candy soon, like the wax bottles of soda or whatever, and
Yeah.
the fake
God,
cigarettes.
those things are brutal.
Fake cigarettes, the fake lips, the
Yeah.
circus peanuts, the orange circus peanuts.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well that was good. I was
Yeah.
worried about those because
You're not bad.
I didn't grow up with a lot of candy in the house.
I don't think we grew up with a lot of candy either. Cookie dough ice cream was always in our house. My mom loved cookie dough ice cream, so that was picking through Ben and Jerry's and picking out all the chunks and then getting yelled at for it a day later when my mom went to eat her ice cream.
Yeah, we were not strict, but just wasn't. You know what we did get a lot of because they were cheap and I liked them was those pies, those little like Hot Pocket size pies.
Oh yeah, mm-hmm.
Got a ton of those because they were $1
Mm-hmm.
or like 2 for 75 cents
Yeah.
at some gas stations
Yeah.
or whatever. Or the dollar store. Yeah, they were at the dollar store
The
all the
apple
time.
pies were good. The cherry pie ones were gross though. But the cherry pies had a little more glaze on top of them, so probably to cover up the cherry.
So there was apple, cherry, blueberry, chocolate. There's a chocolate one in
Was
there.
there a chocolate one?
Oh yeah. Those were my jam.
See, pastries were tough because my mom worked in a bake shop for 40 plus years. So those things just never came home. And we actually got sick of like cake and like buttercream frosting.
Was she bringing home like extra sheet cakes at the end of the day?
Yeah, it's just the worst.
Okay, all right.
Just the worst. Yeah, so any cakes, they ran their course for us. I still don't like cake, actually. Luckily, I passed that
Really?
on to Sid, too. Yeah.
Man.
I like the cake with like thin frosting on it. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it's like you get the fudge, like thinner chocolate frosting.
Yeah.
That I'll do, but like the fluffy buttercream.
Oh yeah, Well, that's almost as bad as like those, like the sugar cookies that are just nothing. It's like they're just white
Yeah.
flour.
Yeah.
Just like a lump of flour
Get
with
outta
some weird frosting on top.
Yep.
And they disintegrate, but they're indestructible at the same time. All right, so I'll give you a trick or treat bag of topics because there's a few we can go into. The first one is I gotta look at my phone for the third one. The first one is using sick time, like telling people to use sick time.
Sure.
So that's one topic. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The second one can be an update because we went through a little thing with that kid that we did the uncomfortable conversations episode with. He got off probation, and some things happened along the way. We were kind of challenged by it. Of like, we had to change our mentality on him a little bit, and also accept the fact that he was doing better.
Yeah.
so that was challenging.
Yeah.
And then the third one, today being Halloween, I put up a graphic. This is much more on the fitness side of it, but it's the Firefighter Cycle of Misery. Did you see that graphic?
I saw it on your account, but I didn't open it.
Yeah. So there's 5 things in the cycle of misery for firefighters. It's injury, then time off, and then rehab, and then re-injury, and then disability. And that's kind of obviously the 5th one, disability, is after you go through the cycle a handful of times, but end up with disability. So we can just talk about that from an injury standpoint, an experience standpoint, or we can hit all 3, 2 out of 3.
This is almost like the runner's cycle of physical therapy,
It's very close to it.
or the runner's triangle. Yeah.
It's very close to it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, what do you think? We have
Wow, that's spooky.
well,
What you did there.
I have those are all free Canva graphics. You can get any one of those with just the trial.
Did you know
account.
that we found out that we found our Station 4 Spartan logo online? Someone found it the other day for $12. So that not only do we have the worst logo in the history
Yeah.
of anything
bootleg?
currently, but it's bootleg now too, because because I know the guy didn't pay $12 for it.
That makes sense that it's so grainy and out of focus.
Yeah.
Because obviously, like, it probably said sample across it, and then it's
Yeah.
just so blown up. Now it still says it, but you can't see it's pixelated. That makes a lot of
The
sense.
punching Spartan, if you look at it at home.
The shirtless punching Spartan
Yeah.
with abnormally
Tiny hand.
long but short arms. Yeah, each segment of his arm is disproportionate to the next, which is cool. All right, so what do you...
What was the first one we were going to?
The first one
sick
was...
leave?
What was it?
Sick leave use?
Sick leave, yeah. First one's sick leave. Second one is the uncomfortable conversations update. And the third one is the injury cycle.
Right. So sick leave, I mean, my personal feeling is if you're sick, don't come to work. And if you get sick at work with something that you feel is contagious, you should go home. It's very frustrating. And obviously there's some recency bias to this, but
recency bias to your whole career, though.
Yeah.
Also, like every year, this is a
it's
thing.
always a thing. And I mean, I appreciate the idea that you're gonna tough it out, and you feel like you could still do your job to a minimum standard of some sense, but when you get other people sick, and then that forces them to use their benefit because they're going to be respectful of the people that work there, then I kind of feel like that's the point where you should take a step back and use the benefit that you've been given.
Yeah.
It's a much harder conversation to have. I probably up the chain and up the seniority chain, if you're a younger person. And it's also each person probably has their individual opinion on how to use their benefits. And if you're talking to someone with 20 plus years who's already has an idea of how they're going to use their benefits, you saying something to them probably isn't going to make the change that you hope.
Yeah.
I can't imagine you're going to tell that person you should go home and they're going, yeah, you're right. That's what I was waiting for. Someone to tell me, to go home. So I guess I would just endorse fully that if you feel that you're in any way going to pass on whatever you have to the members of your crew and their families, then you should strongly consider using your sick time before you come in, or leave, isolate yourself and leave as soon as you can.
Yeah. Well, that was the trick bag you fell into, was that person didn't use their sick time, and then you had to use your sick time a week later or 3 days later. Mm-hmm. But it's not like that person's like, oh, sorry for doing that. Here's 24 hours.
Right.
You're just out your time now, and that person's still coming to work.
And for me, it's fine. I mean, I've got months of sick time saved up for such occurrences, but we have new guys that, there's a guy at work now that I was just talking to the other day who has zero. He's just off probation. Yeah. But he got COVID, from passing on through somebody. Yeah. And had to use 2 days, and now he's down to nothing.
Right. Well, I can tell you from the other side of it, like coming from the contract medic side, it was hourly. So I worked for a part-time department where I was like paid on call part-time. So you'd only get like maybe 4 full 24-hour shifts a month. And maybe you get like 8 split up 12-hour shifts, or 11 and 13, however we did it. So it was hourly basically. And then when I worked for a contract medic, it was hourly also. So if you didn't go to work, you didn't get paid. Right. And then even more so with the contract medic side, there was a long check and a short check. So depending on what cycle you worked on, you either got like a third of your money or 2/3 of your money in alternating checks. Mm-hmm. So if you called in sick one day on a short check week, you're like way down. Oh, sure. And so then you get guys coming in when they were like deathly ill because they're like, I can't call in twice on a short check day. Right. But and there's only so many people to trade with if you're working a contract job, because it's not the whole department. It's only that group of 6 or 12 medics on that department. So that's a hard transition to make, because we'll get guys in now that were like, if I don't come to work, I'm not getting paid. And you have to explain to them that, like, you are in a department now that will literally pay you to stay home. Right. Like they're telling you, stay home and we're going to keep giving you money. Mm-hmm. Don't come in here. And still guys are, until they've had that kind of beaten in their heads and see examples of that, and they use their sick time and then see they're not like out a full days of pay. That's a hard one to express to people, but I understand where it comes from. But that's just one more conversation you got to have with new guys of like, this is the situation you're in now. And this is what, like, my expectations as far as you don't come and get me sick, because then I'll be just super angry that now everybody's sick, especially with this year's just a freak RSV and an everything season. We're going to have it for the next few years, I think, coming off of COVID. But
I mean, my house has been sick for probably 3.5 weeks straight. Like, I gave it to Tay, and then I don't know where Sid got it, but she missed 4 days of school. It's just, which is the most she's ever missed. I think that's the most she's ever missed in a calendar year.
Yeah. Both my kids have been sick, and luckily, that's why I think, like you mentioned, Sid maybe having RSV. I think they had it too, because neither kid or I were affected by it.
Yeah.
And we were around them constantly, and they were hacking up whatever they had, for a week each. But yeah, if you're in a situation where you're not getting paid hourly and you're getting a benefit like sick time, then use it, man. It does speak to a larger conversation. Like you said, you have plenty of time built up. So do I, because I'm using it when I need it and not just when I want to. And that's a whole different conversation based on like the atmosphere and the environment you work in and lots of different factors, right? There's nothing more frustrating than seeing a guy come in who's obviously sick and then either is in denial about it or blaming it on allergies, or saying just getting over it, or just whatever line he's trying to feed you. And you're like, God, dude, just get away from me.
I don't know how it is at other departments too, but we also have this like old guard mentality of like, oh, they're watching you, and it's like,
well, that's what everybody's all hard up on is like sick time abuse, right?
Right.
Obviously there's a cost incurred when you call in sick. Duh. This isn't like working at Portillo's where it's like, oh, I guess we have 4 people today instead of 6.
Right.
Obviously, the city has to backfill your spot. The city that you're working for and the administration understands that people are going to get sick. What they
understand it enough to have negotiated into an agreement with you to say, we understand that you may be sick X hours of time this year, so we're going to permit that. Yeah,
we're allotting this much. We've determined that this much is not acceptable, but expected.
And we understand that you might have longer term things, so we're going to let you accrue that for the time, in case you have a longer term event. And
if you're at the point where you're worried about them pinching you for sick time abuse, whatever that means, quote unquote abuse, I think that speaks to a much larger issue that you have probably. Like you obviously haven't done the work to give yourself the benefit of the doubt when you call in sick. Like there's some people that when they call in sick, you're like, oh crap, I better reach out to them.
Yeah.
Something's going on. There's other people when they call in sick, you're like, shocker.
Yeah.
Shocker.
Must have got 24.
Yeah. Must have been a pay period and just rolled over that 24 mark. So, but yeah, I think that's a good touch on the sick time usage thing. Yeah. Use your sick time, man. It's frustrating.
And I mean, certainly, if you're on the part-time side or the side where you can't afford to take off, like just be courteous at that point and isolate yourself. And, if that's what you feel like you ultimately have to do, but do your best to not expose the other people that are there too, and screw them up.
Yeah. Well, let's pick 1 out of 2 for the next one. Would you rather give an update on the uncomfortable conversation kid, or do you want to talk about the injury cycle?
We can do both.
Okay. All right.
So the uncomfortable conversations one. So that. So he made it.
He made it.
He did.
So there.
No, and I'll give him credit. The parts that you and I are. Well, you had more time with him. I really only have a low dosage of him with the stuff that I do with him.
Yeah.
But I'll say that the stuff that I do with him that he was able to control, he significantly improved on and did a job well enough that I felt it was good enough to send an email to his officer captain and shift battalion chief to let him know that he had made significant changes, like more significant than a lot of people in the department have made.
Yes.
On his own and took that upon himself to do and did it. And so I thought it was noteworthy enough that he should have been praised on it.
Yeah.
And so that was what I could control with him, or what I could evaluate that he could control under stuff that I evaluated. But he made significant improvements. He had lost a good chunk of weight, and the consumption drill that we run with him at the end, he had moved not only into a significant improvement for himself, but into a above expectations score on what she could do, like better than some of our other, recruits that had just gone through the test within the past 6 months. So, tip of the cap to him on that is, being able to do that for himself and taking the initiative to do it.
Yeah. I think we both learned a few lessons. Well, I learned a few lessons in it just from the lieutenant perspective. And he actually told me, I think like the shift before he got off probation, he's like, hey, I finally listened to that podcast episode where you ripped me apart. And I was like, I thought you listened to that months ago. He's like, I just couldn't bring myself to do it. He's like, I knew it was going to be bad.
Yeah.
I was like, well, was it bad? He was like, it was pretty bad. He's like, but I'm glad I listened to it now instead of back then. He's like, because he's like, I got the message then, and that would have just told me the same thing.
Yeah.
And I said, well, that was the point. I wasn't going to tell something on the podcast that I hadn't told you already.
Right.
Like, that's not fair. It's like writing somebody up and then having them find out about it when they have their meeting with the chief, Luckily for me, other people didn't like him. So other people were highly critical of him. And that let me step back and like actually evaluate what he was doing in a positive manner. So then I actually turned in a little bit to his defender at times because people were operating off the information from that incident at that fire where he was struggling big time.
Sure.
At that point, I think that was like 6-ish months into his probation. And that really was a watershed moment for him. That and like the month after that, just from constant contact with him, that was kind of it. And so 3 or 4 months later, when he's 2 months away from probation ending, people were referencing him back to that 6 months in thing, right? And they were evaluating him and judging him based on that, and then offering the same criticisms that they did 6 months ago.
I know mentally I was, because I had a day where we were just over at his station for something, and he was mapping out how many days till probation ended, and I was like, and we were in like, it wasn't like single digit days. And I was like, I don't know if I'd count all those days.
Counting them chickens.
Just yet.
Yeah. So we had a couple instances where guys were like, you can't do this and you can't do that. Or, I'm documenting this and documenting that. And I had to ask him like, well, what did you observe him doing? Is this what you observed? Is this what you thought? He's like, well, that's what I heard. And that's what I think. I'm like, you can't, that's not the same thing then.
Right.
And so you have to go back, and that's a hard thing to do, is go back and actually give someone that you've clashed with or had a confrontation with or been highly critical of, and like say, congratulations, you have done the work. Because it's not frequent. It's not like it doesn't happen all the time.
Right.
And then when it does, you almost feel angry at them of like, crap, I wanted you gone. Not that I did, but that's the feeling of like, now I'm wrong, right? The other problem we ran into with that was people would continue to talk about him and reference how bad he was, but nobody documented anything recent or current on him. And so those rumblings got back to the chief and the administration staff, and they said, cool, show me the documentation of the times where he screwed up since we had those talks with him.
Right.
And there was nothing.
Yeah.
And so then the administration was like, well, guess what? Guess whose side we're on now?
All right.
And not that they don't believe the people who are already there, the employees, but they're like, hey, if you got such a big problem with him and he's that much of an issue, then write something and we'll look at it. Like, we have a very involved and a very active administration, and they'll look at anything that you bring up to them with a good view of it, I think. And there was nothing. And so then I went back to a few guys and said the same thing, like, is this tangible stuff, or do you just not like the kid? And they're like, well, I just wouldn't want to hang out with him outside the job. I'm like, well, then don't. Yeah. But
it's a good thing our department doesn't do that.
Yeah. I'm like, well, then don't hang out with him.
Yeah.
And then I did throw some of our guys under the bus. You have to, if we're going to play unfair comparison games, I said, hey, what about this person? This person came on probation and always met the acceptable standard, but had weight to lose and had progress to make. Compared to this first kid, who's the problem child, he made these steps and he made these changes and he lost up to 30 pounds, let's say, right? Mm-hmm. Did that other person, who is much more sociable and much more of your friend, and you will hang out with them outside a job, did they lose 30 pounds after an incident on probation? And they were like, well, no. I'm like, well, cool. So at a fire then, would you rather have your buddy who you like to make jokes with, or would you rather have the lighter, more in shape guy that can throw a ladder better? You're like, well, that's not fair. I'm like, well, turns out it is.
Turns out. Yeah. That's the way we do things.
Yeah. Turns out jokes don't throw ladders. Yeah. So people throw ladders, and people that have been working at it. And that's unfair, because I threw a few guys under the bus. I said, but this is the first new guy that I can think of who lost anywhere more than 10 pounds over probation. A majority of people we get, they're not all in bad shape. They don't all need to lose weight, but very few people lose weight or improve.
They go the opposite.
Yeah, we have such an intensive probation. There's so much stuff to do, and we run a lot of calls, and they're looking down the barrel of paramedic school. If not, they have like a ton of system entry stuff to do and constant EMS testing. Nobody gets better. Everybody stays the same or gets worse over that course of the year. And this kid got better, you know? So yeah, tip of the cap to him. I don't know if he'll ever listen to the podcast again after the first one.
Right.
And I guarantee I'm going to get some feedback off of this, because after the first one, I got a lot of high fives for calling this kid out. Yeah. And I was like, well, let's not be too quick about that, because we're trying to make him better. And then, so we'll see what happens after this one. Yeah. If anybody listens to it, was like, yeah, please stick it up for that kid.
You get thumbs down emojis.
What are you going to do? Yep. So yeah, those are some good challenges with that, and some good lessons from that. But don't be afraid to reevaluate. Don't fall into the recency, the error of recency, or use the error of recency as a positive and not a negative all the time. But if somebody's bad, fucking light them up. You know, if he didn't make any improvements and he continued to be a chucklehead, I think he'd been fired, no doubt.
Absolutely.
All right, let's get into some injury stuff. So the cycle of misery. I got to pull it back up again. The firefighter cycle of misery, a Halloween experience here. Injury, then time off, then rehab, then re-injury, and disability. And yeah, you said it was very close to a runner's rehab cycle or triangle, which it is. We just have the extra little added thing in there at the bottom of disability. All right, so let's talk about interrupting the cycle, though. Yeah, I got to look at it again. I've put the same thing up for like years now, every year, and I have to look at it every single time. So let's talk about interrupting the firefighter cycle of misery. It used to be called the American Firefighter Horror Story when that show was like, when it was like real popular.
So I got distracted because His Excellency President Galley liked this.
Oh, he did. Well, I guess I can keep it. Yep. Didn't repost it. That's cool, Joe. So if we look at this thing before disability, injury, time off, rehab, re-injury, and disability, where do you see us fitting in there?
Probably injury in the beginning.
Like right after injury?
I would say that we're before injury. We should be before injury. Yeah. And we should be before re-injury is where we should be.
Right.
Once, the hope is that you've developed a program for yourself or for your department to reduce the probability of a training-related injury or on-the-job injury, or reduce the amount of time off from a significant injury that you have. So to me, that's where the physical fitness fits in, of like, we've tried to bulletproof ourselves or give ourselves a suit of armor so that we can avoid a catastrophic injury, or if we get hit, we reduce the amount of time or the severity of it that we actually need to be off from it. We also know that if you go into a surgery in decent shape, your rehab and recovery time is going to be the outcome is going to be significantly better than if you don't go into it that way. Yeah. So for me, that's probably where we fit in the most in terms of a fitness program. Obviously, you and I have a little bit more of a skill set that we've worked with a lot of injured people, bringing them back to like a return to play or return to work after therapy or in conjunction with therapy. But I think from just a fitness side, that's probably where we fit in the best, is pre-injury and pre-re-injury.
Well, I'll say this. With the current climate and the way most departments run, I'd say there's a pretty low likelihood of us being heavily involved before the first injury.
Correct.
But I would offer a plea then that if you're hurt or your department needs intervention, because a lot of people are getting hurt, we need to be right before that re-injury. When they're out of rehab and they're back to full service or back online or whatever you want to call it, that's where we discussed before of like, that's the most vulnerable time you're going to be, because if your shoulder is, rehabbed or whatever, if you got shots in it, or even if you had surgery and you've gone through 6 or 8 weeks of therapy, if it was non-surgical, and then you're back, your shoulder's going to feel better and you're going to be a level of functionality and you're going to be confident with it and comfortable with it, but it's not better.
Right.
Like something, whatever made your shoulder get messed up in the first place is still there, most likely. So you're going to be taking more risks with it and stretching a little further, and it's not really better, or the root cause of it's not really better. So that's when the re-injury comes in. So my plea would be that after you get hurt and you're back to shift, that's when you start investing in, like, we've talked about doubling down on your rehab instead of coasting on it. Like, hey, I can sleep through the night. My shoulder's not hurting. It doesn't wake me up overnight anymore. I can reach the top shelf peanut butter. I can pull my pants up. It doesn't hurt. So I think I'm good. I'm just going to go back to doing what I was doing, Then you're not.
Yeah.
Then you're not. So,
well, and what we kind of know is like the dosage of experience that you get, very low dose with your orthopedic, if you have surgery. So he does this thing, fixes whatever you have. There's no infection, there's no complication, need of revision, then he's pretty much wiped his hands, you know. But for some reason, the golden standard for people is to wait for that guy who then isn't going to see you more than 15 minutes for the next 6 to 9 months, for that guy to go, yeah, you're cleared to return to duty. And it's like, that guy hasn't been, on the ground with you, it's like, then you have your therapist and your strength and conditioning. So yeah, he's saying that, but he's saying you're good to go because you can't make him any more money. His job's done. He's done what he can do. Yeah. But so many people at that point go, well, I'm good. Yeah. The orthopedic with all the education and the highest paid guy said I'm good. And that's really not the case. Like that's where you need to ignore that and say you're not good ever again. Right. and create some sort of management plan for yourself. No different than if you have an old car that you've got to keep maintenance on. Like, you're not going to be like, oh, the mechanic changed my oil. He says it's good. And then you're going to go 10,000 miles.
Good.
It's like, no, you gotta do it.
Yeah.
And, so I think that causes a lot of problems is people go, yeah, their surgeon said I'm good to go.
Yeah. Well, it's a good scope to have. He's like, you're good to get out of my office is what he's saying. You're good to go do stuff.
Yeah. Tear something else so you can make some more money on it.
He knows that the other side is vulnerable now. Yeah. He knows that as soon as I fix your right side, your left side's at risk. So I'll see you soon, bro.
And
keep
then
your punch card.
On top of it, most of the time, those guys get all the credit, So it's like, the therapists bust their ass, and if you go to a strength and conditioning coach and they do what they're supposed to do, it's still the doctor did a great job.
It's the best doctor.
Yeah. You should go see this guy. He
what?
did my shoulder. It's like, well, no, he did, but there's a team of people that did a lot more too.
Well, and that team is important. That's also one of the things we run into is like, people need to understand, or I hope people understand better, that as soon as you're in that cycle and you're going to therapy, like from a department side, even from a professional side, hopefully, we got to be hands off. Mm-hmm. Like we're completely out of the mix then. Yeah. Because we think we're smart and we hold the appropriate certifications for what we do. But if you're going through therapy or you're under the doctor's care and you come to us and be like, hey, can you give me some shoulder exercises? I have to tell you no, because whatever I tell you was not outlined by that doctor or by your physical therapist organization. And so now you're going against their orders. And the first thing that my mind goes to is like, if you get hurt doing the stuff I'm telling you to do, the physical therapist or doctors be like, well, who told you to do that? Right. I didn't tell you to do that. And now you're at risk of like a benefit threat of the city saying like, nobody told you to go hurt yourself again. Right. That's a new injury. That's your problem. Yeah. We took care of our side and you screwed it up. So that's your problem now. And that's like a huge fear for me. Oh yeah. So I tell people like, as soon as you're in this cycle, like we can't touch you. And once you're out of it, once you get out of rehab and you're clear from a doctor, you're not going to any kind of therapy anymore, like call me immediately. Right. And then we'll get back into something. But if you're on the line with these guys, like that's your path. Yeah.
I'll say casually, I agree with you. I do think that there's room to be involved, but everyone has to be involved then. So that has to be cleared with your benefits manager that, hey, this guy is going to do some cardio with this guy who's hurt or on light duty or workman's comp. And then that should also be a conversation that you have with the therapist where you connect with them and say like, hey, so-and-so is looking to do some more. What do you think? Right. And let the therapist help, guide that so that if you are involved, then you guys come up with a plan together of like, okay, well, he squatted with therapy yesterday and then I'm going to have him squat today. Right. It makes no sense. But so it can be, but that's just you just have to get all the players communicating first. Don't just offer it up,
Well, and I think what we've seen, though, is guys who don't want to do that, but they just want to do more.
Right.
So we'll get guys that be like, yeah, I go to therapy 3 times a week, but I want some more. Can you give me something?
Yeah.
And I know I've had that conversation of like, yeah, hook me up with your therapist and we'll talk about it. And he's like, well, no, I want stuff outside of there. And that's where it's like, well, no, not for me or not.
Let's explain to you what progressive overload is.
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're right. And I know you've done that with people where you've been in that environment with that whole thing. But that's just my experience is like guys don't come to me looking to work with their team. Right. They want me to give them more.
Yep.
Give them more because more is better. Mm-hmm. Oh, good, man. Dude, I was thinking today, like, at least half of these episodes I've recorded the day of or hours before. Yeah. I had to get them out. Yep. And, like, tonight will be the same thing because I'm working tomorrow and Wednesday. So I'm like, well, I got to do it tonight.
Sorry for that edit that you got to do.
So stupid. I mean, I was a full month ahead at one point when I had, like, Patrick, Galley, Molly Jones. I had all 3 of them done in the same week. They just lined up that way. And I was like, well, I'm a full month ahead. Yeah. So I didn't do shit for a month. I was like, this feels really good.
I called the idiot to get him over to talk about candy.
And then I went over to your house. I was like, hey, this is coming out tomorrow. We got to get this done. Nothing like putting my problems on someone else, right? Oh, God. But I do have more interviews lined up, but it's always more fun having you on than just talking. I mean, Katie's here. She doesn't want to talk to me.
To you anymore.
She doesn't talk to me. We do that occasionally. Yeah. And that's enough. We get it. I was beat up on her the other day for telling stories. Like I told a story. I was telling. So Katie, did I tell you about this? About the dogs coming through with the medium?
Oh yeah.
Dude, so I was telling that story. So I'll tell it. I mean, we're going long on this one, but I'll tell it real quick. So Katie went to a girls' night and they had a medium show up. And it was just like the TV shows where like bring some personal stuff of a person you want to talk to that's died. Right. And so she put like some of her grandma's stuff in there and they steal the envelope. You show up there, the medium takes the envelope and then takes the thing out and tells you a story about this item without any prior knowledge, allegedly. Right. Mm-hmm. So you get a one-on-one with them and then they do a group thing at the end. And they're doing the group thing and there's like 6 girls there and the medium's like, who wants to talk to somebody? And the one girl's like, I want to talk to my uncle or something like that. She's like, okay. And so they start talking about this uncle and she's starting to go into it. She's like, I just got to say real quick, there's 2 dogs here. And she's like, the medium's like, did you have a dog when you were growing up? And she's like, no. She's like, well, did your uncle, we're talking your uncle now, did he have any dogs? And she's like, my brother had a dog, but like a long time ago. And she's like, yeah, there's definitely a dog attached here. And she's like, one of them's like waist high and really dark with like some brown on her face. And the girl's like, maybe. And she's like, the other one is smaller, but like 40 pounds. And Katie's like, uh-oh.
Coming back to haunt me.
Yeah, she's like, shoo. Like,
Lily, get out of here.
Like, she's trying to talk to her dead uncle. Can you give her a second? So she's like, oh, crap, those are my dogs. And so they wrap up whatever, and the medium leaves, and the girl was like, I don't know what dogs you see. And Katie was like, those are my dogs. Sorry about that. Yeah, she said they were fine, and they're having a good time, and they see what we're doing and all that stuff. I'm like, maybe this chick is legit. Like, I don't know what. Unless she saw your phone with the lock screen that's still our dogs on it from 3 years ago. So, yeah. But she tells this story. She's like, so-and-so lost her uncle 3 years ago, and that was this, and this is all the same story I just told. I'm like, none of that shit matters. Yeah. Like, please stop boring me with this phenomenal story about our dead dogs coming through and talking to you. Anyways, we'll work on it. Anything else?
I don't think so.
All right. If you guys like it, go to the Buy Me a Coffee button on the 4th Shift website, and I'll be posting that stuff all the time, and we'll talk to you guys soon.